Okay, I told you guys in the previous video that I was actually going to discuss this topic. I'm kind of getting to a point where I'm really getting sick of the big two's actions, more so DC's than Marvel's. And let me explain why. Because the whole debacle with asking artists to draw Harley Quinn committing suicide, and the whole deal with Batwoman not being able to marry her girlfriend, I have to seriously ask the question, and of course Todd McFarlane being lazy and making the same excuse that he's made since the 90s, that, oh yeah, we're going to get another Spawn movie, although this time he's saying, oh yeah, I'll pin the reboot, when he can't even keep up with his own comic series, and had to actually pass the torch on, and then, Haunt, a character that should have been unique, is then made into basically Spawn 2.0. These are things that I not only hear from other fans that I see in comic reviews, but these are also things I'm starting to notice about the comic industry, is the homophobic, just blatant violence for the sake of violence, sex for the sake of sex. Hey, let's do something really cool and controversial. And now DC tries to make an apology for the whole Harley Quinn thing. I'm sorry, I realize that you're making amends for a very bad PR stunt, but don't apologize, DC, and I'll tell you why you shouldn't apologize, because you shouldn't have had not even come up with it in the first place. It seems like Dan Didio, Joe Quesada, Axel Alonso, Jeff Johns, and many of the... Sorry, cat interrupted my train of thought. It seems like over at both DC and Marvel, it seems like now you have to have a lot of stupid creative stunts just to get your books to sell. At least with Marvel, and I give them credit with Marvel now to a certain extent, at least they're actually trying with their books. At least their books are actually being a little more successful than DC's, in my opinion, because they're not trying to do violence for the sake of violence, I almost said Spectacular Spider-Man, but I mean to say Superior Spider-Man, which that's something I got to bring up here. But I'm going to bring that up in a moment. DC, what have they been doing? Well, let's see. The whole debacle with Batwoman, the whole Harley Quinn deal, the fact that when they first began the New 52 2 years ago, which, by the way, it should just be called the 52, not the New 52. And it's hard to call it the New 52 when every title they initially had is canceled, that this should not even be able to work. It was good for a test basis, even though it made a lot of people mad, but now it's to a point to where it's failed. Go back to the New Earth continuity. Because to erase 75 years of history, of course you're going to get mad. Of course you're absolutely going to get mad. Even I was mad, but I thought, okay, I'll give this a shot, give it a chance, see where it goes. It might actually get better than when it initially started. I was so badly wrong. They cancel Mr. Terrific's book. They make Static Shock seem like a stereotypical ghetto black kid, where the only interesting character in his book was Hardware. Um, Justice League International was good till Jeff Johns threw a creative fit because it was outselling his own Justice League book. And then you have his pretty shitty plot-lined, Justice League. And I do apologize for saying it that way to those of you who have children, but I gotta be honest, it was shitty. The plot lines made no sense. At least with Earth 2, when they reestablished the JSA, or this version's JSA, at least it was done tastefully. But we also get to a point, I think, with the New 52 where it seems like, okay, Lois Lane, we're going to shove her out the way, even though she's always been Superman's main squeeze. We're going to shove Steve Trevor out the way, and we're going to have Wonder Woman and Superman hook up, just for the sake of hooking up. The only thing that's a good outcome of that is the fact that we're going to have a Wonder Woman and Superman, team up book, which I don't mind that. I like that idea, but considering that this is the new 52, I'm not really waiting with bated breath. And the whole deal with Brian Azzarello making the Amazons like the real life Amazons, read issue 7 in the original series to understand, and read issue 7 in his, first part of his run on Wonder Woman. You'll understand, as you've heard Rapperfest, me, and many other people protest. And if you haven't, I'll say right here, it was not good. It was probably one of the most contrived and most messed up, ways of explaining the Amazon's origins. And I feel at first that it was cool that they had the new gods, but they shoehorned Orion in. Ares training Diana how to fight was big continuity gift to me. But I thought, okay, for the sake of this being a new universe, I can accept it, but I still don't like it. So there's a lot of things more on DC's side than really Marvel's. I mean, what has Marvel done? They've taken Sam Alexander from the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon and made him Nova. To me, I don't like that, but that's not the worst atrocity that Marvel's committed. Flash Thompson still being Venom, I like that idea actually. I still love that. Iron Man forging his time between Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy. Little weird when I thought about it, but at the same time, if Tony fits in the Guardians, he fits, and I don't mind that. Um, see, I think the new Thunderbolts or whatever, made up of I think Red Hulk, Elektra, and a few Punisher, and I think a few other characters. I don't mind that. That's a pretty good ragtag team. The fact that Kane is trying to reform or becomes an anti-heroic Scarlet Spider, I really like that. I'd actually love to honestly read that and see how his character actually got evolved into that point. Uh, yeah, minus a few things here and there. Not really much against Marvel. More DC is really kind of messed up. No, that's not to say that DC doesn't have some redeeming qualities. A lot of people don't like Villains Month. I can understand why. I'm going to be waiting for the trade myself, but I still applaud DC for actually doing an entire month dedicated to their supervillains and giving their origins. I don't mind that. I think that's actually a good marketing ploy, actually. Give us the origins of Black Manta and Cyborg Superman and Bizarro and stuff. I like that. I really do. I get behind DC on that at least. But it seems that there's an impasse at DC. It seems like a lot of their decisions that they're making, the ones that really they shouldn't be making, the ones that are actually avoidable, they then have to go back and basically eat crow and apologize for. And to me, why apologize for something that in good conscience, and I use air quotes here, in good conscience, that you actually did in the first place? If you knew people were actually going to, and what made the Harley Quinn suicide thing worse was that they did it during Suicide Prevention Week. Now, I understand it's supposed to be for satirical purposes and stuff like that, but there's a certain line, not just in comics, but there's a certain line and sense of humor in life that you really should not do. That was a boundary line that should not have been crossed. So to me, I find that really unacceptable that DC wanted to go that route. I also find it really unacceptable that they forced their entire creative team on Batwoman to leave based on the juxtaposition that, well, oh, we don't want, you know, Batwoman to get married. Why? Because you have your own personal belief that gays should not be married. I'm sorry. There's a difference between your personal opinion and your professional opinion. Professionally, like let's say for example, I'm the editor of DC. Let's say I'm in Dan Didio's position. I may be homophobic, but I'm going to be like, okay, if this is the route you want to take, professionally, I can get behind this. I don't personally agree with it based on my views, but professionally, if this is what you want to do with the character, if this is how you want to evolve the character, make them better, okay, I can approve this. And that's what I feel should have been done at DC. Homophobic or not, professionally, if your fans like the character simply for being the character, then that shouldn't matter. And if it's done from the position that, well, oh, then it had to be thrust in people's face that, they're gay and they're married, and will lose readership. No. If some twiddling soccer mom gets offended because, oh, well, a member of the Bat family's gay and they're married, let me explain something to you. Kathy Kane being a lesbian is not the first thing that I think about when I think of Batwoman. I think, okay, Kathy Kane, ex-military, came from a military background, skilled hand-to-hand combatant, holds her own right next to most of the Bat family, is a good character in her own right. That's what I think first when I think of Kathy Kane, aka Batwoman. I don't think about, well, oh yeah, she's a lesbian and she had a relationship with Renee Montoya, the second question. That's second in my mind. But even then, I get behind the character because, homophobic or not, that shows progression. It shows progression in comics when you're willing to have a character be married. And as Tony17451 said, the theory is that I think the big two are scared to have their characters be married because then that grounds them. And if that's the case, then I strongly am against that because, in fact, characters being married actually strengthens them. I mean, look at Lois and Clark, in the pre-52 era. They had a pretty good marriage. Peter Parker and Mary Jane, Buddy Baker and his wife Ellen. You know, these are examples of characters that were married, and whether their partner was, human or superpowered, they still made it work. Big Barda and Scott Free, Mr. Miracle. Mr. Miracle and Big Barda. Great example of a superpowered couple that their relationship was not forced, but it felt organic and natural. So I really have a problem if this theory has some concrete, clout that characters being married is going to limit them creatively. And I want to actually talk about Peter since I'm on this subject. What is the deal at Marvel with holding Spider-Man down now? Ever since, Joe Quesada came up with One More Day and stuff like that, it seems like Peter just cannot get a break in terms of character development. One More Day he uncharacteristically sells his soul to Mephisto. Peter reveals his identity in Civil War because he's forced to, and I believe that Iron Man should have some repercussions for that, but he doesn't. And so he has to give away his marriage to MJ, which is so unlike Peter, to be that desperate. Um, and this and that, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I care not to get into, or that I don't care to try to explain. But now we have Peter's body being inhibited by Ock. And everybody in the Marvel Universe is dumb. Just straight dumb. That they can't figure out, especially Mary Jane, that, hey, something's wrong here. This isn't Peter. Mary Jane of all people should know that. Captain America of all people should know that. Wolverine should kind of know that. And I guarantee you with this team that Luke Cage is leading, even Luke is gonna think, yo, this isn't Spider-Man. Nobody has figured this out other than Kane. Kane's the only character that's like, you're not Peter Parker. You're Ock. And then they're making this deal where, oh yeah, Peter's, floating around in limbo, or he's inside Ock's head and Ock had to psychically force him out, or some dumb crap like that. It's like, give me a break. It's like, put Pete back in his body. Stop with all this stupid, shrilly nonsense of, well, oh, he's going to be possessed by Ock because we have nothing interesting to do with the character. I realize, and this coming from me writing Meridian Park and doing Marvel 2014 now and stuff like that, doing actual creative writing, I understand the writing process that sometimes you run out of ideas for characters and that you got to sometimes, in a sense, like, break bread with the impossible. But there comes a point where you have to ask yourself, with this next story arc, deadline or not, do I go for broke with the dumbest idea in my head, or do I bite the bullet and try to give a convoluted but at least helps keep the character stay where they need to be so the readership actually, stays neutral? I'd rather take not meeting the deadline, getting yelled at, and potentially being fired for like trying to come up with a much more thought out plot line versus coming up with the convoluted last minute, oh, I gotta rush this out, nonsense like what Dan Slott put out for Superior Spider-Man. This whole concept in and of itself, and I can't believe I'm actually going to use this derogatory term, but it is so ineptly retarded that anybody that was a Spider-Man fan or is a new Spider-Man fan is going to have half of their brain cell capacity actually killed within an instant. Because anybody that knows of Spider-Man, casual fan or not, knows the logistics of Peter, in and out, know him as a character. So it seems to me like Spider-Man, they really want to take the whole Parker luck and then extend it so way out of proportion. So way out of proportion. Like, almost way beyond this screen. Like, here's basically try to proportionalize my arms here. Okay, I'm moving my... See, the webcam's throwing me off here, guys. So basically, my arms are extended way past this screen, and this is basically the line of stupidity. It's like at least 2 or 3 feet beyond what you're seeing on the screen here. Maybe longer, I don't know. I never measured my arms. But it seems like we're getting to a logistical point with comic books, and it's not even just the big two. And it's not just Image, it's just any company in general. You should never forsake what makes a character a character. You should never write a character out of character. And if you can't come up or run out of any new ideas, boom, give it to somebody who can actually write it and keep the ball rolling. Now, if you got a contractual obligation that, hey, you got to do this character for this many issues and whatnot, okay, yeah, you're screwed. But there comes a point creatively where you have to go, okay, I have a job here that I need to do. I got to have a certain way to write this. But do I forsake what made me love this character and go in a direction that is not only going to make fans angry, but then is going to basically shoehorn me where my back is going to be against the wall? That, in essence, guys, is the power of creative writing. That's also the power of, unfortunately, writing yourself into a corner. Any good writer will tell you that when you write yourself in a corner, it's sometimes hard to come out of it. But that's just my logistical point with comics, period. Especially nowadays. Too much maturity and too much dark grittiness added to comics. Make it fun, make it interesting. Make it to where kids can actually read this stuff. If I want to look at a girl with her back arched like she's a porn star, I'm going to look at porn. If I'm going to, if I want to see the Punisher very bloodily and gorefully, gun guys down, I'll pick up some of the Punisher Max series stuff. There really, guys, should not be a need for this. And I'm not just talking about people in the comic industry. I'm talking about just period. There should be no need for this. What happened to the days when the story made the character, not the character made the story? Let me explain a little bit of what I mean by that. Seeing Peter Parker's resolve to quit being Spider-Man and then become Spider-Man again, the story made the character in that moment because it was the story journey of that character. But instead, when I say the character makes the story, is that, well, this character is the main arch point of this story. Kind of like how some people said that Nova was the real star of Annihilation. No, he wasn't. Richard Rider was just one part of a cast or cabal of characters that made up that storyline. He wasn't single-handedly fighting off the Annihilation Wave and the Brood and all that stuff by himself. He did have a little bit of help. See, that's what I mean by that. But I also think, and I want to get onto this subject a little bit too, it's also the overzealous fanboyness. And yes, I'm going to go into a subject that a lot of us have been talking about that's been heard beaten to death. And I know a lot of you who don't want to hear it, you might want to skip these last couple of minutes here because I'm going to be ranting about this. I want to talk about the whole Batflick thing. Not so much about Ben Affleck being cast as Batman. While I don't agree that he should be Batman, I'm going to talk about the negative reaction. And I'm going to talk about it, period. This negative, self-entitled, self-important reaction that most of you within the comic community who are so overtly passionate about your characters, open my blinds a little bit here so I can let more light in. Those are so overtly passionate about your characters, or your characters as you put them, y'all need to have your head examined. And let me explain to you why. When you are so passionate and get so upset over needless, stupid stuff like casting decisions, and to where you threaten to take out somebody's family, to where you threaten to hurt and maim and cripple somebody, that's to the point to where it's no wonder people file charges against people. And it's no wonder that in magazines, websites, and everything that geeks like me or the Mount Vernon Kid or nerds or any such thing like that are given a bad name. And I've noticed that mainly it's either the people that came from the 90s, the millennial comic book fans, or it's these baby booming, miserable old farts who apparently feel that, well, everything was better back in the 60s and the 50s and stuff. Okay, I won't disagree with that. The Silver Age had a lot of, good campy stories, and I enjoy those stories. That's my favorite kind of genre, actually, of the comic book industry, is the Silver Age stuff, especially with Marvel and DC. The big two. But I do like some of the 90s stuff. I do enjoy a little bit of Spawn and stuff like that every once in a while. Even the Amalgam Universe, when they actually had that going. You guys remember that? My main point, guys, is that, and it's especially towards the baby boomers and the millennial comic book fans, you guys need to stop your crying. You really do. And for those of you who are of the older baby booming society of comic book collectors, let me remind you. Let me remind you of a couple of people. I'm gonna do some shoutouts. I'm gonna throw some names out there. Hippie Collectibles, Howler Mouse, Why Not Art, um, Draken Howlett, Captain Cummings, Scott Bromstar. Um, I forgot his name. I think it's like Mystery Man or something like that. Whatever. I'll figure out his name later. The guy's first name was Travis. You got him. You got the great legend. You got R. Dowdy. So let's see. Hippie collectibles. Da 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 da. Captain StrangelifeSo you got all these people in the YouTube comic book collecting community, guys in their 40s, 50s, some of them probably approaching their 60s. Do you hear them complaining? They don't exactly like it, but do they throw a hissy fit about it? No, they do not throw a hissy fit about it. They may make comments of like, this feels like they're trying too hard to be dark, gritty, and edgy. Comments like that. They're actually constructive. They're not saying, well, oh, I don't like this. I want to, massacre and butcher Jeff Johns' whole family, his whole family tree, mafia style. See, old or young, if that's the mindset that you guys have, see, something's not right up here. And y'all need to be put on some psychedelic drugs, or psychotropic drugs, I should say, to correct myself. Some psychotropic drugs, or you should maybe check into anger management. You should check into all these different things because that's not a clear, conscious decision. It's not. In fact, what you're doing is that by making this conscious decision to make death threats, you're not only showing that you as a fan can't be taken seriously, but that none of the rest of us can be taken seriously. Those who actually have an actual legitimate serious opinion. Those who actually can, for the most part, like I'm trying to do here, constructively, you hear that word? Constructively. It's a beautiful word. Constructively. Say it with me now. Constructively. Base their opinions. I'm not the best at constructing my opinion, but at least, at least it's not like back in the day where, I was mad and, I would start yelling and swearing like a sailor and yeah, I still curse in my videos, but not as much. I try to be more constructive now, and that's an age thing. As I'm getting older, I'm learning, it's not worth it to get mad over little dumb things anymore. In fact, it's actually kind of pointless and stupid. It's like enjoy what you have. Doesn't mean you don't have to sit there and smile all tightly about it. No, just look at it, say, I don't really like that, and then just move on. Do I like Ben Affleck being cast as Batman? Hell no. I don't think that he's my choice at all. I don't think he's the perfect choice at all whatsoever. But do I want to go after him and, Jennifer Garner or his whole family tree and wipe them all out in like a suicidal car wreck? It's like, no. It's like Ben Affleck's a person. Whether he accepted it or not, that's irrelevant to any of us. Maybe he might be a good Batman, maybe he won't. It's not going to stop me from wanting to see the movie, but I'm going to go in with low expectations of him being Batman. See, that's another thing with age that I've been granted a little nugget of wisdom for. I don't get mad because, the hype has been destroyed. I go in with the mindset of, well, there goes my expectations, but I lower them. It's the way it is. But I feel like I've covered all my bases. I feel I've made a lot of good, valid points. So with that, guys, I'm going to stop this video. I thought that I would actually get a lot of this off my chest and basically briefly cover a lot of the things that I've seen that I finally just had to say enough and actually call BS on, especially with DC, because it's getting to a point now, guys, to where, especially with the comic industry, we're seeing a lot of stuff that really should not be happening. And we are seeing veteran writers get treated like crap, and their voices can't be heard because, oh, they're contractually obligated by this company. See, I don't like that. I don't like this corporate mentality for comics. I don't like corporate mentality, period. And not just the US, but around the world, I don't like this mentality. If this proceeds on, we may see the end of DC. We might see the end of Marvel. We might see the end of Image, Dark Horse, Dynamite, or any company that decides to pull all these shenanigans and this nonsense. But then again, who am I kidding? I'm probably wasting my breath on people that don't want to hear what I have to say because I'm just another consumer and statistic in a long chain of people, and people that are too lazy to want to stand up for what they feel is right. Truly, it's a sad generation that we live in where baby boomers and even millennials are actually part of the same problem, and that they both equally agree on the same thing that annoys the rest of us who actually, and I'm going to go back to that word, can actually can structure, can actually have the ability to structure our thoughts and our opinions rather than acting mean and old and crabby like people in an old folks' home.